Thanks for joining me today. I want to give like a background on who you are and what you do and the mission you're on, but I thought I'd give a little intro because what people tend to do is they tend to ask the guest first, and I think I want to give a little shout out because we've known each other for a little while, and you're one of those people that always comes front of mind to things. So the way I would explain you to people when I do intro emails for you is first and foremost you're a great person, you're an entrepreneur. You're a builder and an operator, which many people can't do. You're one of the select small percentage of people who understands what it takes to be a modern day company. So you integrate media and media creation into what you do, and you've always put community first. So have I done a good job?
It's better than me, probably. Thank you for that. Yeah, I really appreciate it, Danny. Yeah, no, I think media is important. As entrepreneurs, we're telling a story, we're creating new ideas, and we need to be sharing that with the world. I fundamentally believe that entrepreneurs make the world a better place. I've said this many times to the point that it's almost like a recording now. But for the trying to avoid being not authentic, I really believe that entrepreneurs, because we're the ones who are standing up and saying there's got to be a better way, and to be able to scale a business, to be able to grow a tribe, to be able to attract people to our cause, we have to be we have to make sure people know about it. And so that's where I think social media has been fantastic for helping us over the last 20 years to do that. I'm a big fan of using media for that. And you said mission. I guess my personal mission somewhere around 10, 12 years ago, I decided that I'm dedicating my life to championing that entrepreneur mindset. And that I've been doubling down on that for the last several years.
And you've had quite a successful decade or so. You've been involved in many different businesses, all different shapes and sizes. You've obviously got a lot going on. I think somewhere to start might be with the new podcast series you've got, which is called Misfits, right?
Yeah, Misfits Mindset. It's about what we're doing is sitting down with founders of scale up companies to really dive deep into how they think and how they approach decision making, how they attract people to their team, getting the right people on board, how they rally people around their purpose. And then when it comes to pivoting or making really tough decisions, what goes on in their brain. I think there's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of content out there on how to do this, what to do, tactics and creating strategies. But it's the mindset I think it takes to really be successful, because business is hard. And yeah, I just think that I really want to dive into that for my own learnings, but also for other entrepreneurs as I champion this mindset.
I think it's something that you said when you go to like conferences, people talk about what they did. They don't necessarily talk about why they did it and how they did it. And then on podcasts, it's like the greatest resource for almost anyone because you can find out what they did, why they did it, and some of the how. But what you hit the nail on the head is the mindset. No one really gets into that and drills into it specifically in and around business. And I think that's like something that's going to be unique and why people will want to tune in as of next week for episode one and the series. Was there anything specific that you learned? Are there like two or three different really high level or really specific lessons that you took away or that you have to apply for your new business?
Well, I don't want to spoil the season, of course, but I will say that there are some recurring patterns that we noticed across the 10 episodes in season one. Season two's in production right now, but we've got a range of people, different industries and different phases in their business. They've all raised millions. Some of them have exited, but I think resilience is one key word that I would use. But I don't want to go into too many details because it's a great season. And yeah, you're right. The trailer and episode one drops on Monday the 30th, and then for 10 weeks we'll have each episode coming out.
And you in something that might is there anything that really surprised you, like that really jumped out and you really were surprised by what someone said or like an undertone that happened that you weren't aware of or you didn't think would come out of the questions and answers?
Yeah, There's one thing that pops to mind is in episode 1 with Holly Hull. She's the founder of an events company. She's actually nominated for the Great British Entrepreneur Awards. And I've always been, for myself, I've always tried to separate emotion from business decisions. And she made the point that actually it's not about separating emotions, it's about controlling emotions, because you need emotions in business because that's what helps you bring out and rally people, and the positive aspects of the emotions can contribute to business success. And that just made me see things a little bit differently.
Everyone understands IQ, your intelligence, especially around like in a job that you've got a few skill sets that I would apply to IQ. You've got EQ, which is emotional intelligence, which got a lot of attention a while ago, but a lot of people don't actually work on it. And I think, like you said, like the emotions and being able to either control them or lean into them is really important. And then I call it PQ, which is political intelligence. Like I think what a lot of people haven't realised is the two actually play together. There's the emotional intelligence and then the political side, which is typically playing the game or leaning into working through some of the problems. And I think a lot of the time the emotional side is tapered down or held down, whereas actually a lot of the time you can win by embracing and blending the two sides together. So I'd love to. I'm going to be tuning in next week.
There is a you bring this up. There's another episode. The founder of a company called Tokyo, which is TOQ. So Eduardo talks about how we can see truths on both sides of a conversation or a topic, and I think that plays very well into business and in sitting down and negotiating business deals. But it can go into relationships in everyday life, to politics, to everything.
I can't. The On a lot of people's leadership journeys and entrepreneur journeys, they are so busy they don't ever take a step back and consider what happened, or don't actually try and feel their emotions and the emotive sides. I'll be tuning in to definitely dive into it and understand it. We You've also got like a new company coming out that's part of the podcast series to a degree. If Do you want to dive into it a little bit and give people a flavour of what you're going to be doing and how it's going to be driving business forward?
Yeah, the podcast itself, our audience are the people that we want to be surrounded by, the people we want to do business with in general, entrepreneurs, people with a growth mindset. We're launching Brave. There's some news that came out last week. The founder of a co-working brand called Bold, we set up in 2016, was acquired in 2019. And back in May, I started working on Brave. Actually, I've been working on the idea for Brave for quite some time, but officially back in May, I started working on Brave. And then we just announced the launch of the new company last week. In January, we're launching the Brave app, and we've taking all of the growth mindset entrepreneurs from startup to scale up around the world and giving them an opportunity to connect with each other, come to our events that we partner with other entrepreneurs to facilitate and to bring people together. We have a network of locations that people can tap into, but I don't want to make this a sales pitch about Brave, because really, it's really about the mission of championing that entrepreneur mindset. That's just the way we facilitate that.
And that's something that, like, as long as I've known you, it's something you've been passionate about, and you've been doing it for such a long time. I think people often don't realize like how long it takes and how much work it is to not only start a company but have that like mission in the background where like you're striving to always succeed and always have that like connective tissue or element where people have to come together to succeed. I think that's something that's probably been lost a little bit more recently.
Well, it's the cliche thing where you say, okay, well, it's 10 years of hard work, looks like an overnight success or whatever. And I think what I've learned in my journey is the vehicle may change, but the mission doesn't. And I've been in several different vehicles, but my mission has stayed the same in the past decade. And this is a new vehicle. It's an evolution of an existing vehicle, but I think the mission of helping entrepreneurs grow their businesses, making real estate easier for entrepreneurs, and I think it's my small contribution to making the world a better place.
Sounds a great mission to me. I think there's a lot of obviously there's a lot of noise around returning to the office and office space and that. And Dropbox recently announced that they're going to be giving back a lot of space. Do you think that like return to office is going to be like this big contentious point for the future, or do you think there's going to be a shift and people will, 2024, 2025 will come to a point and it will there'll be like a leveling of the market almost for return to the office, and the office being like one of the most important elements to success and for corporations or businesses.
I look forward to the day where we don't have to talk about return to office. I look forward to the day when we have podcasts and not talk about return to office. I'd rather be talking about return to humanity. Because if you ask 100 different people how they like to work and what makes them successful, you're going to get 100 different answers. So I think uh, last century that we've been working in offices in the knowledge based economy, it's all been real estate's all been about taking a white box and giving it to a company, the company turning it into a branded box, and then that branded box, the company tells everybody to fit into. And I think going forward, it's going to be a lot different in the sense that people understand how their team works best, and everybody works best slightly differently. And so companies will to attract the right talent, and they're going to be more empathetic to people, and they're going to be able to help people be successful in their own way. And that's going to mean a lot of different things for a lot of different companies. But the office quotations no longer has a monopoly on work. It just becomes one of the tools in the whole platform of work. And so to me, and this is some of the stuff that we want to address with Brave, is we want to be able to create offices that what we're calling campuses, our flagship locations in cities, where there are places that destinations that people come to do certain types of work some days. And the app gives them access to tap into other communities and workplace environments on other days. But there's going to be days where they don't go into an office and they work from home. I'm working from home today. So I think the future is flexible, and that's what I've believed for some time. Just kind of surprised it took a global pandemic for other people to get on board with it.
I think for a lot of people, and probably for the next generation to come, because there isn't like a playbook, there isn't a copy paste that people can follow. It's really difficult because the people in charge are always going to default to or mimic the way that worked for them. And I think
Yep.
this is like the one of the core tenets of my mission of trying to fix the broken world of work is to help people understand that everyone is different, everyone is engineered slightly differently, and everyone can work in different environments, but the traditional office space isn't always conducive to work and definitely isn't conducive to collaboration. So it's just something that you nailed it on the head. It is humanity, and but what we've lost a little bit in this as well is understanding that some people can work in a busy, noisy coffee shop and others can't. Some people will do their best work on their mobile phone between commuting on the way home, and other people have to sit in absolute silence or sit in their bedroom on their bed to do their best work. It's just that's sort of been lost in the last decade.
And even within one person, it's not binary, because I know sometimes I do a lot of travel. Sometimes on a plane, I can be super productive on my laptop and getting things done. Other times on the plane, I don't even want to open my laptop. I just want to watch some movies and drink some wine and have my meal and go to sleep. Or so I think it depends on the day, and so it's not just depending on the company or depending on the person. It actually depends on the day and the mood that person's in. So I think the future is a lot more human and empathetic. And I think the leaders that are going to succeed going forward, the companies that succeed with these leaders, are going to be more in tune with their team and empowering their team to make those decisions for themselves. I think the other thing is you talked about how people learn to be successful growing up in the workforce themselves, and they're trying to pass that on. I think the best leaders are leaning into the future by looking at what the next generation is doing. And so I was at a I was at a conference 2 weeks ago at Google HQ in London, and they were talking about AI, and they were talking about how uh, AI is going to impact us. And look, there's a lot of questions around that, and we won't go into that. But one of the questions that I thought about was, okay, well, if we no longer have to search for the answer, but we can speak the question, and not just the answer comes back, but what to do with that answer, and not just have one answer of path, but multiple paths that we can choose from. The AI really takes all that up. What if we're just thinking about the right path to choose? The answers are all there. Here's the right path to choose. We have to decide that. So that's going to just change the whole workforce. And, we can go down a rabbit hole there, but I think there's more questions than answers around that right now. But I think it's important for us to lean into the future of work by looking at how people are growing up today.
For sure. We can flirt a little bit with AI. It's overhyped at the moment. I think a lot of the tools are very similar. My true belief is that at the end of it, we're probably going to get to a point where we have assistants, like an AI assistant, that's going to help us keep us informed. The one thing that a lot of people aren't talking around is like our competitive edge, which is that we've got the gut, which will often give us the best answer. So a lot of us are really data driven, and that'd be really
We've got the
easy.
what that gives us the best answer? The
The
gut?
gut, yeah. So like our gut reaction, our gut
Yep.
feel drives us forward. So almost all big businesses, say 20 years ago, didn't have any of this data, or any startup 15 years ago had a tiny, tiny percentage of information or data. And what a lot of companies and people have moved away from is the gut feel, or what's driven them or made them successful. So some overlean and over-index on it, but there's a lot of companies now who are going to allow large language models to give them the answer, and without being cautious enough to query it or say to ourselves, but what do we believe, and what's our gut telling us, or what is it that we might have missed that's going to give us that competitive edge? Because otherwise all the data is going to drive all the decisions. It's going to be moving away from what's made a lot of people successful. I'm not a, everyone will quote Steve Jobs in 5 years' time and say, well, Steve Jobs wouldn't have given all of the data away and wouldn't have enabled the machine to make all the decisions, especially on design or on features. We're going to get to this point where we're going to be assisted, and I completely agree. It will give us the pathways or the steps that we could take. It's just on us now, as like the the decision makers or the business leaders, to decide whether that data is right or those pathways are right, or we need to interject and become a different source of decision making. Because unless you're going to give your complete knowledge center, like I've got almost 8,000 Apple Notes, unless I'm going to give that into a large language model, it's not necessary to understand me and help the team around me. And I think that's what some of the async work is sort of done well, is everything's around clear communication. And I wonder in the future if we're going to be able to get to a point where we can say, AI's given us this answer. How do we give the second, third, fourth order on it? And how do we empower people around us to say, actually, we don't believe that is true, or we need to tweak that? I think that's something that a lot of people have almost stepped away from a little bit and gone on their hype cycle to a point, but I'm happy to be proven wrong in the future.
No, I think there is a lot of hype around it, and I'll be the first to raise my hand to say I'm not an expert. I'm very curious about it. Um, my friend Jason says that nothing's AI right now; it's just machine learning.
True.
There's no artificial intelligence. It's just is learning right now. But I think I can imagine that in the future we'll be able to ask it a question. It presents us with several options. We choose. Let's go back to the humanity side. We choose as a human what we think is the right path forward, and then it goes and completes the task. So I think what that does, though, if that is a reality that we will one day live in, from a leadership perspective, we have to stop valuing doing in time and put more value on outputs and results and thinking. And that's a big shift. That's a big shift for leadership who's used to managing people doing things on a systematic basis.
The question I always come back to now is, for the middle managers and the people who are department leads or business leads, is, are you going to enable and allow more policing? So, like, are you going to allow human policing? So, where they are, what they do, the delivery on the task, or is that going to be some sort of automation that's going to be the driver and the police force on their work and the outputs of the company? Because I think that's where we're going to land in a short while. And are we going to be able to trust that enough, or is it going to be still relying on a combo of people and process that's automated?
Look, I don't have the answers here for sure, but my ethos is that we bring people together around a mission. We work backwards from that mission to how do we get there? We all get on the same page with that strategy, the tactics we're going to deploy, and then we give each other the space and autonomy to choose how to do that and come together when we need to. Now, that's a bit maybe altruistic or maybe even utopia, and it doesn't work right now for all companies because there's a transition going in leadership styles. But the future to me is people aren't policing, people are motivating.
That's what the difference between a manager and a leader is: motivation and driving people to get buy into what they're going to be doing long term. Manager often is someone who moves people from task to task, or tactic to tactic, or channel to channel, or spreadsheet to spreadsheet, right? So yeah, I sympathise and appreciate you giving your thought on that one. With a lot of the stuff that you're doing, you're kind of predicting a little bit the future of work and some of the ways of working. Do you have do you have some predictions, or do you have like some feeling around what the future of work might look like? Obviously, you're shaping it a little bit with Brave, and you're sharing a load of insights through the podcast. Do you have some thoughts around the future of work and where we might be moving towards?
Well, at a macro level, I think we're going to see a lot more companies get started, a lot more people moving into entrepreneurship, a lot almost call it solo Inc. or, freelancer Inc. There's going to be a lot of people that become their own entrepreneur. Maybe they don't build up a big company with lots of people around them, but they plug into other people's companies and a lot of people working together in that way. I think there's still going to be some big companies that grow. I think we're going to see a lot more volatility around that. We see companies today that have been around for over 100 years. I think we're going to see less of those in the future. Companies will get set up for a specific cause. They'll go for several years and then they'll go away and they'll evolve into something else maybe. Um, so macro level, I think we're going to see a lot more uncertainty on jobs and stuff like that. But people on the flip side have the opportunity to create their own income, create their own wealth, to control their own destiny. I think that's going to be very difficult for some people, but this is why I think you go back to the whole cliche of nurture versus nature. I think some people are born with sort of a innate ability to take on risk, and I think other people, even if they're not born with it, can learn it. And so I think we need to be in our school systems teaching people not to just go get a college degree or you go to university and then get a job that you stay at for a long time. We need to be able to navigate this new world, and people need to be taught this. But I think what all that means though is that, and I'll come back to my world of the future of work as it relates to the future of office, because that's where sort of I live. I think real estate in general has always been inflexible for entrepreneurs and is very expensive to get into. And in the past, we used to think the first thing when we're going to start up a company, we got to go get an office. And now we don't have to do that. But at some point, we need to access professional places that we can meet people, whether it's our team or so it's team or our colleagues and customers. And so I think the future of real estate becomes more flexible because as I said earlier, it doesn't have the monopoly on work anymore. It's got to be more service driven. It's got to be more hospitality driven. It's got to facilitate a community because I think people want to go where they belong. And if they are empowered to choose when and where they work best, it's about going to places that I feel taken care of and I feel like I fit in.
100% agree that the one there's like one thread there that personally really like is years and years we've both worked in environments where the office is open plan. You have your desk, you have your monitor or two monitors, you have your laptop or your computer, and that's your space, and you work around people from your team or your department. And then everything turned into hot desking, and people didn't really change up, and they loved their desk, their cup on their desk. They knew that they were near the toilet or the kitchen. And then interestingly, now it's not, the office is still very much similar layout. People didn't rethink or restructure it and didn't embrace the opportunity to change it. And something that I worked with a startup a few years ago, and we really rethought the office. Like we thought about how people would want to collaborate, how rather than the customer support team didn't want to be near the sales team, it's how could you embrace a different layout or different areas where people could be noisy and collaborate, and then more library based rules where people could go and be quiet, and the kitchen was more of like an informal breakout area where you could have meetings or brainstorms, stuff like that. And I think that's what's really important for the future is offices will look different, like they're going to have to operate differently, but connecting people and exactly what you said is it can't just be a grey box anymore. It has to be something that
Yeah.
is interchangeable, or somewhere you can feel like you've got your community there, which is so important. And I think where leaders need to evolve most is understanding that it's different now. Like it has to change in the near future and the long term. And I predict that people that have or haven't rethought the office are going to lose, and those who really rethink it or rethink environments are going to be the ones that win. And I really like the idea of companies don't have to be there for 100 years anymore. I think the people will spin up companies, solve specific problems, and then move on to the next one. And they don't have to be acquired or have to sell to see that as successful. I think there are going to be so many different career paths people take. And rather than having one career or two careers, you might have three or four. And then you can patch on top passions that you might have. So I love your prediction, or where you're going to help reshape some people's future of work.
Well, this is why I'm curious about the Misfits mindset, the scale up entrepreneurs. Because if you think about being empathetic with people, but also rallying people around a mission and a purpose, entrepreneurs, startups are where that ethos sits. And you can see it clearly the best. The people that are the early founders, the early senior team, the early employees, all the way down to employee number 20, 50. At some point along the line, the further you get away from the founder in that early stage, the further you get away from the purpose and the mission. If you look at companies today, I think the companies of the future, the leaders of those companies, and it doesn't have to be just the founder and the CEO, but the leaders throughout the company are able to be so close to the mission and the purpose and are able to articulate that and have that front and center in all of their conversations with recruitment, attracting people, with customers, with investors. Everybody's aligned around this mission and purpose because I have a theory that when someone is aligned, when someone is working towards something they really care about, they don't think of it as work. So if in the future of work, if people are aligning their purpose with their income, then they're going to be happier. They're not going to go home at the end of the day and hate to go back to work the next day. They're going to look forward to it. Mondays are going to be better for people. And so I think it's important that leaders really articulate that, um, and don't just treat people like an employee and like they're solving my problem of getting to the next level. It's we're all on the same team here trying to advance this particular cause. If you think about volunteerism over the last several years, volunteerism has rose significantly. People want to pursue something. People want to spend their time doing something that they care about, and that they're not getting paid for it. So imagine being able to do that and get paid for it.
That's a big idea that I pitched a number of years ago for somewhere I used to work,
I
and
saw that actually.
And it was one of those ideas that like is more than money. Like I don't want to get into like too much detail into it, but if you can imagine more, so for what a lot of people don't realize is companies often just are based on
Yep.
transactions and, user data. What we've moved away from is understanding actually is things that are very often more valuable than that. So whether that's the time that you can spend and donate, or it's the energy that you can give to someone, or it's the support you can give to other people, doesn't always have to be monetary. And very often the monetary doesn't match the love or the energy or the time someone else can spend. So interestingly, it all comes around. But completely agree when you can base your future on something that you're really passionate about and that you want to pursue. Some companies will embrace that, and I think that's something that we're going to see more and more. And I personally would love to see people, even if they're entrepreneurs, if they can get the support internally to push that forward. I think we're going to be in a much better place
You
commercially and
mentioned
and
you mentioned
and
the word
humanity wise.
you mentioned the word transaction, and I think companies and employees, that's a transactional experience a lot of times. And we announced the Brave launch last week, and my LinkedIn DMs like got flooded, and you can quickly see who really cared about the cause and who didn't by what they said. And like, I've had some people to say, "Look, if you need any help, I love your mission. I love what you're doing. I'll work for free to help you." And then, it's like, okay, well, at which point we're going to be hiring people, that person, she's who I want to hire, or he's who I want to hire, because forget skill set and experience and all that. It's the passion they have for the cause that makes the most difference, because you can teach all that other stuff.
100%. And funny enough, with what you're doing and where you're going, we're seeing a lot of groups, like iMessage, WhatsApp, Telegram. They're becoming more and more powerful in and out of companies because you can learn far more and ask questions of people who know the company or know of the leaders, and they're going to get unfiltered responses. Whereas online, you tend not to get that. But it'd be really interesting in the future, especially in with Brave, is you might get recommended someone who is an incredible employee who you wouldn't want to lose, but it lines them up really nicely. And you can, not that your platform necessarily will love to do it, but that recommendation, that connection is going to be so valuable. And what people will pay high amounts for, where they used to have to pay a recruiter high retainer fees to send someone who isn't anywhere near as passionate or qualified. So I look forward to a launch.
Me too. Thank you.
Cool. Why don't you promote the podcast, the new launch, obviously that's coming out fully in January, but where should people connect with you? How should they either help you, or how can people help you moving forward?
Well, thank you, first of all. I would say that Misfits Mindset drops next Monday. Find it on all the major podcast platforms. I'm on LinkedIn, so Caleb Parker on my social media, Instagram, formerly Twitter, X, at Caleb_Parker. So I'll obviously share in all those places. But listen to the podcast. That's where I would promote the most. You'll find on the podcast how to connect with Brave and our timings and when our first events are, where people can plug into to connect with other like-minded people. And then look, I think the best way people can help me is to go out and find a problem that they're passionate about and go solve it, because that's how we create a better world, and that's what I'm trying to champion. Let's solve the problems of today and create a better future together. I know it sounds cliche and cheesy and all that, but I'm American, so I can get away with it, I think.
And you can tell it far better than us miserable Brits. So yeah, it's great. Thank you for all your time, your honesty, and I look forward to the podcast and supporting you on Brave.
Thank you, Danny. Really appreciate it.